You knew that they were losing the war.
Yes, because we heard rumors and stories that the Russians any day they're going to be here, and maybe a week or so before we finally marched out of Auschwitz, we started to hear the Russian cannons, and we knew that we didn't know it was Russian, but we heard like huge explosions.
Right. Now,
and we sort of seen the Germans themselves were a little bit nervous already.
When you were in Auschwitz, they blew up the gas chambers, right?
Everything they blew up.
No, when you were there was a rebellion in the gas chamber, right?
I wouldn't be aware of it.
You didn't know about that?
I didn't know about that.
You didn't know that?
No.
No. You never saw anyone...
The information was so limited, we didn't know hardly anything what was happening outside.
Right. Now, did you understand German to understand the...
Yes.
Right. Do you ever remember meeting anyone from, from Greece or from Italy or any of those Jews?
We met some. We met some Jews from other parts of the world, from Russia and from the Ukraine, and not from my part of the world, but I think we met somebody from Austria, some Jewish people.
Right. How did your clothes hold up when you were in Auschwitz?
How did they hold up? They held up. I wore everything all the time.
Did you, like during the day when you were in the barrack, did you walk around in your shoes, or did you walk around holding your shoes?
I was holding my shoes most of the time.
Why? To preserve them?
I want to tell you something. When I was, in my village, I walked around barefooted a lot.
Right.
And I was used to, and I was more comfortable barefooted than with my shoes on.
Right.
And I wore shoes when I had to wear shoes, but you had to wear shoes, but also many times I walked around and carried them many times.
Right. I mean, did people do that to preserve the shoes so they wouldn't wear out?
I have no idea. I don't know why, but I know my shoes were maybe 2 sizes too big for me.
Right. Okay. So, were the conditions getting worse in Auschwitz as you were there? I mean, you were there into the winter. How did you stay warm?
That was a good question. How do we stay warm? We piled up against each other to keep the warmth, and the outside lane kept moving in. But when I left Auschwitz, we went to Sachsenhausen.
Right.
We took my group to Sachsenhausen, and from Sachsenhausen they took us to Mauthausen.
Wait. The last time we were talking, do you remember any other stories that happened to you in Auschwitz?
Not really. The only thing I remember was fear, agony, and misery, and suffering, and always being afraid.
I mean, were there things that happened to you that were so bad that you're just not telling me?
Well,
I mean, because you think that they were just, you don't want to say it?
I mean, many things happened, but the worst thing that could have happened, the worst imaginable that could have happened is really knowing that your family was destroyed, and it didn't leave you. It was constantly, no matter what happened, there were incidents that happened, like for instance, I was sleeping on a bunk, laying with maybe 5, 6 people on the same bunk, and somebody had to probably urinate from the top, and it came down on the rest of us.
Right.
A terrible thing that happened, but the most miserable that could have happened is knowing that what's happening to our people, to my mother and my 2 brothers and sisters that were murdered over there. I mean, it just never left my mind, not for a minute.
Right. Well,
many times we went hungry, I was beaten, and all those things didn't matter because I sort of lost all feelings, lost of being a human being.
Right. I mean, a lot of times people who, you were pretty young, and sometimes very young people, when these things happen, they don't act rationally. So, I mean, you were mostly concerned about yourself.
Well, you try to survive constantly, you just want to survive.
I mean, did you really have time to worry about your parents as much and your family when you were in the camp?
Well, I was afraid, what was happening, what happened to them constantly, and I naturally worried.
Right.
I worried, and I was also scared.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, kids who are 15 years old, they don't put things in perspective. Sometimes,
Well, that's right. I was that age, maybe 14, 15, and you're right. You sort of
but you're looking
blank
at
out.
it.
You
Yeah.
blank out. You
I mean,
sort of.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at it from an adult standpoint of how you should have reacted, but how you actually reacted to things could have been very different.
Well, now thinking back, many things come to mind. I try to sort of think back of, some of the stages we went through. And it's very, hard. It's very, very hard to sort of get over it.
Right. Okay, so what do you remember about leaving Auschwitz?
Well, I left, one day they sort of evacuated everybody. We were going, and nobody knew where we were going. But we did go, and we wound up in close to Berlin in a place called Sachsenhausen.
So when did you leave Auschwitz, and what month?
I can't remember exactly.
And did you go on a march?
Yes.
So was this the march where they evacuated the whole camp, or?
Yes, yes.
So this was probably in January.
I know it was cold. It was very cold.
And did you know why they were evacuating the camp? I mean, did you know that?
Well, there were rumors constantly that the Russians are coming, and the Russians are coming, and there was rumors going around that, if we stayed there another week or two, we'd be liberated.
Now, do you remember anything that happened in the last few days?
No, not really.
In Auschwitz, were the conditions worse, or?
No, I just don't remember. I was being taken out with a group, and I was selected with a group, and we were called Landeshutkommande. The Germans called it, and that's when this, what's his name, this doctor,
Mengele,
selected this group. And we thought we were going to work in a factory or something, but we wound up in next to Berlin, there in Sachsenhausen.
Did he ask you questions?
Nothing. Just looked at you physically and pointed you to walk in this direction.
Did you have your clothes on or off?
We had part of our, like the shirt off.
Right. What do you think he was looking for?
Maybe he was looking for healthy kids that could work.
Right. Did they ask you your occupation, or?
No, nothing. Just looked at you and pointed in a different direction. Go this way, and these go the other way.
Do you think that he chose?
We really didn't know why they were selecting a group, but you were hoping that it's going to be to go to work or do something instead of being exterminated.
What happened to the people who weren't chosen?
We don't know. I don't know what happened to them.
Were most of the people chosen or not?
Not most. I would say maybe 1/3 or so.
Right. Okay. And this was on the last day. When was this?
That was towards maybe 2 months or so, or maybe 6 or 8 weeks before we were taken out of Auschwitz.
So after you were separated...
I never seen that group.
The other group? You don't know what happened to them?
No.
And were you put in a barrack together with the other group?
No. We were just the group that was selected were in a separate barrack.
Oh, yeah, so you were in a separate...
They told us anytime they're going to call Commander Landeshut to fall out.
Did they write down your numbers?
No.
So
the selected counted a group of, I would say, maybe 80 to 100 kids.
Right. Okay. And then, so when you left Auschwitz, was there snow on the ground? And was this during the morning?
I don't think it was snow. I think remember being very cold.
No. What kind of clothing did you have on you? Did you have any extra clothing?
Not really.
Did you have food with you?
Food? No food. I had a piece of black bread, I remember, like a piece of a brick.
Right, dark bread?
Dark bread, yes.
And what kind of shoes did you have?
What kind of shoes? I had shoes. I had shoes. They were, I think, 2 sizes too big for me. And I stuffed them with paper and whatever.
Right.
Remember, I was from a farm, from a small village, a poor village, and I thought that I knew how to survive a little bit.
Right. Oh. Okay. And did you leave with the whole camp left?
When I left, I don't know if the whole camp left. I thought everybody was leaving.
Were you marching on the roads or through cities or?
No, we were marched.
Country?
We were marched through the roads for a while, and then we were taken by truck.
And who was guarding you?
Germans. The old people. It looked like old men, old German soldiers.
Oh, the Wehrmacht.
Wehrmacht, yes.
Right. Were they with dogs, or did they have rifles, or?
They had rifles.
Did they talk to you?
No.
And how did you get food or water?
Well, we stopped at some point, and they came and they served food. You came with your mess kit or whatever you had, that, and they give you a thing and you ate.
And what happened to the people who couldn't keep
and
up?
I think that maybe for 2 or so days they didn't feed us, but the people that fell out, I think, that couldn't march, I think they were shot right then and there and taken away.
Did you see any bodies on the side of the road?
Yes.
Were these all men, or were some of them women?
All men.
All men?
All men, yeah, old men mostly.
Okay, and were you marching together with some people that you knew?
Just from camp, like, people that we sort of seen in camp.
Right.
I never did form any kind of a camaraderie with anybody, except, we sort of asked them where they were from and, what they did home and so on and so forth. And
right.
People kept reminiscing how, life was and, stuff like that.
Where did you sleep at night on that march?
On the ground.
I mean, did you go into a barn, or you just slept outside?
No, we slept out. And I think now, thinking back, that the march for me and that small group that I was with wasn't more than maybe 4 or 5 days. And I was so weak and dried out that I also at some point just felt I couldn't. And I remembered developing diarrhea, and I just felt that I couldn't continue anymore, that I just had to sort of fall out, give up. But there were a couple of guys next to me that grabbed me and helped me to sort of, for a few minutes, to overcome it.
Really?
It was really sort of...
So these were strangers?
It was, well, we were strangers. We were all Jews.
Right, but, in a terrible situation, then they were helping and they saved your life.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So,
I had the situation in Mudhouse, and when we get to it, I'll tell you about it, that I felt very strange. And something happened that I thought was, incredible.
Right. So, on this march, do you remember, did you have a march at night or only during the day?
Mostly during the day.
And do you have any idea what percentage of your group died on the march?
I have no idea.
No.
I understand that, most, according to stories, after the war, after liberation, we met people and so on, like we talk. Even now, every once in a while, we run in, like in Florida, recently I ran into a man who was also in Auschwitz, and we sort of try to reminisce what happened. He was there when the gypsies were exterminated. At the same time I was there. And, we talk. What happened to me, what happened to him, and we sort of know what happened. Not exactly, we were not at liberty to go from place to place, from barrack to barrack, to find out. But we seen, and everybody was just struggling and hoping to either survive or die or something.
Right. On this march, did you have a hat on your head?
Yes.
Right.
They called it Mützen.
The Mützen.
Mützen. And the Germans had this, what they called Sailorpel. And the Nazi came, or the German soldier came to count, they sort of called us to attention by hollering, Achtung, stillgestand, Mützen up. Take off your cap. And eyes right or to the left, Augen rechts or Augen links, whichever way. And if you didn't, you were not or didn't understand or didn't cooperate, you were hit with a club, with a stick, mostly by one of our own people.
Right. Did they ever ask you to sing songs?
No.
Do you ever remember singing any songs?
No.
No. Okay. And anything else that you remember about that march? Were there a lot of guards around you or very few?
There were, well, not too many, but they were guards, like...
They never talked to you?
You would consider many or not. There weren't many guards, no, but there were a considerable amount of guards.
They never talked to you?
No.
Did anyone try to escape?
Not for my group.
Did people...
I thought really there were no escape, but maybe some people did get away.
Right. And when you woke up in the morning, were there any people who didn't wake up?
Not really. Not really.
No.
But I remember going through a town. I don't remember what town it was. And, you know, but the streets were clean. There were no Germans on the streets. But, you know, sometimes we broke ranks to run into the hallway to look for some food or something. And I also remember breaking ranks one time. We were starving, really. And we ran into a hallway, and we found a little basket of potatoes. I don't know if they were left there on purpose or it was just an accident.
Right.
But I remember grabbing a couple of potatoes.
Well, some other people went in there with you?
Yeah, there was another one or two kids ran in also. They were grabbing some potatoes.
Right, so that was really a miracle.
That was really a miracle, that's right.
And you ate those potatoes raw?
Raw, yes.
Right. How long did the potatoes, were those?
Maybe for a day or two.
Right. And did you have to make sure
it was really something. We were really starving.
When you ate the food, did you have to make sure that no one else knew you had the food?
I don't think so. No, I was never, you know, in a position where anybody would grab anything from me.
I mean, if someone knew someone else had food, would they just attack them?
Maybe they would steal it at night.
Yeah.
But not, you know, physically come and attack you.
Right.
But I've heard stories where food was stolen, bread was stolen from somebody that saved a piece of bread, and the next morning when they woke up, it was gone.
Right. Do you remember how you got water on the march?
No. No, but evidently either we didn't drink or we just had water at some point. You know, there's an awful lot that I just can't remember exactly how, what, you know. I try to think back, and it was, you know, I hate to sort of imagine or you know, what happened. But I know, you know, myself that when I sort of gave up and I said, I can't go another step, you know, and I was just grabbed by some guys as you got to come.
Did you eat grass or anything besides food?
You could anything, even garbage.
Do you eat bugs or, you know, some people found snails or anything like that?
I think that even, I don't know, I hate to think that, but I think that people even, you know, I can't imagine that people even went through horse manure to find something to eat.
Yeah.
It was terrible. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, that people ran and...
You know, it was just horrific, awful.
So you remember seeing that happening, people running?
Seeing it happening. People were crouching and running and getting hit and beaten with clubs, you know, as if you broke ranks.
Right.
But I remember, you know, once we got to Sachsenhausen, we were fed.
So, wait,
we were fed, and we were also given...
But you're skipping something here, because you said you were on the march for, like, about 4 days?
Yeah,
and then you were
4 days.
You were put on trucks?
Yes.
Were these, like, open trucks, or?
They were like military trucks.
How many trucks were there?
I don't remember. But
and how long were you on the trucks for?
Maybe a day or two.
Right.
You know, some...
Now, why do you think you were put on the trucks?
To move us to, I guess the Germans didn't want to kill us all or exterminate us all, and maybe they had no place to do that, and they had to move us to another place. And I really believed that once we got to Sachsenhausen, that it was very close to Berlin. There was rumors going around that we were going to take to the city to clean the rubble from the Allied bombings.
Right.
But that never happened.
I mean, do you think that you were kind of a special group?
I thought that this group that I was with was special.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that way because...
I thought really that we were chosen to go to work at some place.
Yeah, because the fact that they put you on trucks and use the resources of trucks at that time rather than just keeping you marching, you know, that was kind of unusual.
You know something? That I thought really... that it was sort of the end of the war, because, look, the Allies destroyed Berlin and everywhere, and there were bombings and raids and all sorts of things, and we've seen an unusual amount of Nazi troops moving, running from place to place, you know. So it was really, I mean, look, it was 1945 already.
Right. Okay, so then they brought you to Sachsenhausen?
Yes.
And what kind of condition were you in when you got there? Was it during the daytime or at night?
It was during the daytime.
And how were you?
I was pretty sick, emaciated,
Right.
just hanging on to life.
So you look like the people we see when we see the pictures of the concentration
I
camp?
looked like what they called a Muslim, like a corpse walking.
So were you really...
When I looked at a piece of glass, my eyes were in my socket so deep that I could hardly see them. And if I sat down on a toilet, what they call one of these latrines, my behind was hurting me from bones.
Right. I mean, were you able to mentally aware of what was going on around you?
I don't think so.
Was your mind clear or not really?
Not really.
No.
I don't know how anybody's mind could have been cleared.
Right. And so you got to Sachsenhausen, and
Yes.
Where did they bring you?
Into barracks.
And what did
Also, they gave us a chance. I remember picking out some heavier coat, like a coat of some sort of, that I, had there, in Sachsenhausen. But we weren't there too long, maybe 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Approximately 2 weeks, maybe 10 days.
Do you remember anything that happened to you there?
Not really. They were just moving people out of there. From Sachsenhausen, they were evacuating them.
Were you sleeping on a bunk there or on a floor?
I was sleeping on a bunk.
Right. And they gave you food there, though, right?
Yes.
Sure. Okay. And so you weren't doing any work or anything, were you?
No. As a matter of fact, no. I can't really remember of doing any kind of a work at all.
Do you think they counted you when you were there?
I don't know. I don't think so, because there were so many people murdered on the way. I don't see how they could have kept count.
Right. And were the guards still with you that took you there?
I'll tell you a story. When we got to Sachsenhausen, also we walked, and something happened. On the way to Mauthausen, you had to cross a river and go up the hill, because Mauthausen was on top of a hill.
Right.
And just before we were crossing the bridge at the front, just before you got to the bridge, there were 3 Nazi soldiers hung, German soldiers in uniform,
Right.
hung right on top of right on top of the bridge there, like over the supports, the
Right.
bridge supports, and each one of them had a sign. I can visualize them now, with a sign in front of them, hanging in front of on their chest, but they were dead, hanging like you
Right.
hang somebody.
Right.
And on the sign it says "Für meinen Heimat." I never forgot that. Whatever that means, it meant for my homeland.
Right.
And they were young Nazis. Maybe they escaped, or they were recaptured, or something happened, and they're whatever.
Right.
But I never forgot that. And then we went up the hill, and we met a lot of other people that were in Mauthausen that came from not the concentration camps, but they came from work brigades.
Right.
And it was so bitter cold up on that hill that we were really freezing to death. There was no heat in the barracks, and we sort of piled up one against another one, and formed like little groups, mounds, like 30, 40, or 50 people, and we were sort of leaning against each other. And we kept taking the outside ones inside once they froze to a point.
Right.
But one thing I remember one time, I walked close to one of the, fences where the German guards were. And I kept looking at this guy, and he was a very old man. And he was sitting like on some kind of a barricade at the end of the fence, and he was eating from a mesket.
Right.
He was eating, and I just kept looking at him. And he kept looking at me for a while. And then, he walked away from where he said, but he left his bread on the barricade.
Really?
And without looking back, he talked, without looking at me, he talked in German, and I understood him. And he says, young one, he says, the heart can cry, but the eyes have to smile. And he said it in German. He says, das Herz kann weinen, aber die Augen müssen freilich sein.
Huh.
Whatever that meant. I felt at that point that it was a young, old man just drafted into the army, and he was not one of these Gestapo killers, that he was still a German but a human being.
Right.
But he was helpless to do anything or anything.
Well, on the other hand, there was also the end of the war.
I ran to that wall and I grabbed that piece of
Right.
bread, as soon as he walked away far enough.
Right.
And it took me about 2 minutes to eat it.
Right. It was also the end of the war, and they knew they were going to lose. So, this wasn't, if it was a year or two before, they didn't know, these guys were afraid.
They were afraid.
Because, at that point, this was the last few weeks of the war. So these.
That's right. And let me tell you, and maybe the last few days we didn't eat or they didn't feed us or anything. We were just laying there, waiting for whatever is going to come. And one day, after laying there for a few days and just not eating and being sick and hungry and tired of even living or going on, people came running through the camp and hollering that the Germans are gone. In Jewish they holler, the Deutschen sind weg, the Deutschen sind weg, the Deutschen sind nicht du. And it's sort of, in my mind, I says, my God, what's happening?
How long were you in Mauthausen for?
Maybe 2 months.
I mean,
or maybe 2 or 3 months.
Mauthausen, there was a stone quarry there? Wasn't the whole place all stone?
There was really in Austria. We were separated in separate camps. Gunskirchen, Hersching, Mauthausen.
So which one were you in?
They didn't, Mauthausen. And they really, I don't think they had a crematorium in Mauthausen.
But do you remember seeing the stone quarry?
No.
Oh, so you never worked there?
I never worked in it. I was always on top of the hill there.
Did you do any work at all?
None. Not at all.
So what were you doing there?
Nothing, just waiting to die.
So were you walking around during the day?
We walked around. That's what we did, walked around.
Or were you just lying in the bunk?
Lying or walking or doing something, just, like useless.
And did they give you food in the last?
Yes. Well, they fed us. But I think the last few days there was no food. But the Germans knew already that it was the end.
Right. So, do you remember any stories that happened? I mean, you were there 2 or 3 months in Mauthausen. Did you see anyone get hung there, or?
No. I've seen people being beaten.
You did?
Yes, but not really hung.
Were you ever hit, or?
Yeah, I was hit many times.
In Mauthausen?
Mauthausen. I was hit a lot in Auschwitz, and mostly by capos, by pushing myself maybe to get some extra food or something like that, when I was still, had a little strength. And
I mean, were these violent struggles?
They were pretty bad, and they had these Jewish men that were selected to be like, we called them capos, and they had an armband, and they walked around with a club. And I guess they either tried to impress the Germans or they had to do what they had to do. But I understand a lot of them were caught after the war by some of our own people that were, recognized them.
Right.
They either killed them or they sort of took out their anger on them.
I mean, did you understand that you were going through a unique event while this was happening?
No.
I mean, did you realize that they were killing millions of Jews while this was happening?
Well, we never knew before we were taken to Auschwitz. And I can't understand it to this day. Listen, I'm now 79 years old. On my next birthday, I'll be 80. And I can't imagine me today or any other people, Jewish people, being taken like sheep without fighting back. I know that in my village we had healthy Jewish men. Some were very able-bodied men, and they could have devoured those few Nazis that came to take us.
Right.
They could have killed them. And also, we had the mountains, the Carpathian Mountains. We could melt into the mountains, run away, and somehow either survive or at least die fighting these Nazis.
Right.
I mean, I would, nobody could come into my house, and I knew that something like that was going on, and me being taken, or let my family being taken.
Right. So
that
what
wouldn't happen. They could take me, but in a bag, in a box, but not while I'm living.
Right.
I spent 4 years in the service here in the American Army. I was 16 months in the Korean War, and I was wounded over there. And I also received the Silver Star Medal. I went into the service, and like everybody else, as a recruit. And when I was discharged after the Korean War, I was a master sergeant. So I had experience fighting in the war, in a war that lasted, years. And I also, in the Korean campaign, we lost over 30,000 kids that got killed.
Right.
And I kept telling myself, what could happen that hadn't happened to me already.
Right.
I mean, I thought, but still, it's hard and it's whatever. But I keep thinking back and saying, we had an awful lot of Jewish people that were taken. They could have fought back from the beginning. And we weren't. Why? I don't understand it. Why didn't they? They thought Mashiach is coming?
Right.
Or they thought God is going to come and save us?
Well, the Jews weren't a unified group.
They weren't organized.
Yeah, they weren't an organized, so. And a lot of them didn't know what was going on.
We didn't know what was going on.
They never heard of Auschwitz before they got off the train.
That's right.
So, very few people who went to Auschwitz knew about Auschwitz before they went there. Some, but very few.
We never heard of it.
Right. Now, why do you think that you survived the camps? I mean, were you just lucky, or were you strong, or were you smart?
I tell you why I think I was just lucky. I'm just lucky. And maybe youth has something to do with it. But,
Were you healthy?
I was very healthy. I thought I was very healthy. Even now, I still think I'm healthy, and I'm, a senior citizen. But I still feel that, I have problems with my back. I had a back surgery and other things, but not life-threatening situation.
Right. Okay. So, what do you remember anything else in Mauthausen? I mean, that was a pretty terrible camp.
It was a terrible camp, but I got there towards the end already.
Right. And do you remember meeting people? From? Did you meet any Italians or Greeks or?
I've seen some foreign people, Italians, and maybe even Germans. They were in camp, but they had a different kind of. The Jews had a yellow thing, and the other ones had a green thing on the uniforms.
Did you ever fast on Yom Kippur?
No.
In the camp? No.
No. I was pretty religious before the camp. I like tefillin every day, and I used to go to shul twice a day in the morning to Shachris and Mincha Marav in the evening with my father. We were pretty religious. We were Orthodox, not Hasidim. We weren't Hasidic, but we were Orthodox. We observed all the holidays and Shabbos, and we were, pretty Orthodox and pretty religious. But, after the war, I sort of lost it.
Right.
I felt that God is not interested in us.
Right.
I ceased to believe that we had the chosen people. Chosen for what?
Right. So anything else that you can remember that happened in Mauthausen?
Not really.
Were they counting you there?
I'm trying to think back if they were counting us. I think they were counting us in Auschwitz, in Mauthausen too. The Germans kept count.
Right.
They were very efficient.
Were you still talking to the other people, or were you just too out of it by that time?
Well, we sort of talked. We talked to each other.
Right. Okay. I mean, did you have lice on you?
Did we have lice on us?
Yeah.
Possibly. I don't remember showering.
No?
No.
So, I mean, what were you doing during most of your time
Nothing.
During the day? Were you inside the bunk lying on
Inside and outside and just talking and nothing.
Could you go anywhere you wanted in the camp?
No. Yeah, in camp you were more or less walking around.
I mean, could you go several barracks down and visit people if you wanted to? Or?
Not really. You
No?
had to stick to your barracks and all around the barracks. You know, and sort of, you know, now, my memory is sort of so vivid, you know, so I can't remember of every detail, you know, that happened like every day, the daily occurrences.
Right. Now, you know, a lot of this occurred during the winter. I mean, did you put like cement bags under you to stay warm, or do you remember doing that, or did you have an extra layer of clothing ever?
Well, we had some clothing, but you know, I think I had under me wooden boards mostly. And a wooden board wasn't so terrible; it didn't sink through you. But if you had to sleep on cement in the wintertime, it was trouble. You'd freeze to death. So I don't think I ever slept on cement. I'd slept on wooden boards without any kind of a mattresses or anything like that.
Right.
And that was okay with me, but, you know, I didn't, you know...
I mean, did you fall asleep and were you out like a light in the camps? Were you just so tired that you never woke up in the middle of the night and thought about things?
Well, I always thought about things, you know, but I was able to sleep too. But, you know, you sleep and you wake up maybe every hour, every couple of hours, and then you try to go back to sleep. I mean, the body needs it, whether you like it or not. You know, you go on so many hours without sleeping, you fall asleep sitting down or even standing, you fall asleep.
Right. Did you ever see the dogs attack people or no?
I've seen dogs, but the Germans holding the dogs, but I didn't see them really bite anybody.
No, you never...
No, they were, the Germans used to hold them, and they were more afraid of them than anything else. It was...
Did you ever see the Germans or the guards shooting people from the guard towers?
Yeah, no, I seen guards shooting people close by, like very close, you know, to say, you cursed Jew, du verfluchte Jude, and I can't imagine what the man did, and I seen him just shot right through the head in front of me.
Really? He's right next...
An awful scene, an awful scene. And I've seen that several times. Men got killed.
Right. Were you ever in a situation where they took out like 1 out of 10 people and killed them?
No.
You never saw anything like that? No.
No.
Okay, so you were Mauthausen for...
I heard of groups that the whole group was taken and they had to dig their own graves and they killed them all. But
right.
It didn't happen. It happened, I think, in the earlier years with the Polish and Russian Jews. But, you know, the Hungarian Jews were the last ones to be taken.
Were you discussing with the other people the fact that they would never let you live? Did you actually talk about that or not really?
Yes. We talked, we never thought of being liberated. We never thought that we'll live long enough to be liberated.
Right. I mean, so what was the point of continuing?
At one time, you know, we thought that the Russians are so close to Auschwitz that the Germans won't have time to kill everybody.
Right. I mean, what was the motivation to live if you thought they were going to kill you?
There was no motivation. You know, at the beginning, when I was first taken to Auschwitz, maybe the first few months, you know, I used to believe what the rabbis used to tell us, that to die in the name of your religion and believe in God, you go straight to heaven. And I, as a child, really, I used to believe that if I die, I would see my family again. It was a very, very strong belief that sort of stuck with me for quite a few months, until little by little sort of faded away, everything faded away.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's very hard to imagine. I mean, you've interviewed so many people, you know, and you've talked to so many, and, you know, you heard each one of them, you know, talk about their experiences, and I know each one of them had to be horrible, and each one had to be worse than the others. But it's very hard. Towards the end, when I was liberated already, I sort of lost everything. I lost my humanity. I lost my belief. I lost. I never thought that, I'm going to live and sort of enjoy life or see life or even fill my belly with bread one more time before I die. I sort of lost all beliefs and everything. I just thought either I'm going to be murdered by them or die.
Right.
But then, the Americans came in. Then the Messiah came.
Right. So what do you remember about, do you remember anything about the last few days you were there, or was there anything different about those?
No. It was pretty much, every day was pretty much like the day before.
Do you remember the Germans disappearing?
Yes. I'll never forget that.
When did you?
Overnight they disappeared. But in the morning, all these these towers, the Germans, the posts, and everybody. There were no Germans anywhere. They were away from the gates, and people ran all over like crazy, hollering, that the Germans are gone. The Germans are gone. And then, like an hour or two later, we seen an American Jeep come right into camp.
Now, what were you doing when that was going on? Were you outside running around, or?
I could not barely walk. I sort of got up from where I was laying, and I started to walk towards the gate, and I remember crying, like my tears were coming down, and I say, okay, the Germans are gone, sort of in my own mind, I say to myself, and I kept asking myself, where shall I go? Where shall I go?
Right.
I didn't know where to go, but I just moved to the crowd.
Did you think they might have been trying to trick you?
I didn't think so, not when we see the Americans.
Right, okay, so then...
We knew it was over.
Yeah, what do you remember
also,
about...
I remember a woman coming up, or coming to the group, and she had a patch on her arm that says UNRWA.
Right.
And, and there were a lot of people from the UNRWA that were helping. These all are trying to take us into schools, to places, where we would receive food and medical care and stuff like that. And I remember going to bed in a bed. Three of us shared a big bed, finally, with a mattress and all of it. And next morning when we woke up, one of them was dead.
Oh.
He died. He just ate too much and went to sleep and never woke up.
Oh. Yeah, to go through that whole thing and to die in the
end.
Yeah. Now,
terrible. And they kept telling us not to eat too much, not to.
So what did the Americans?
I couldn't. I ate like maybe 2-3 bites, and I couldn't eat anymore because my stomach was sort of.
Right. So it might have actually been advantageous to be a little bit more sick at the end because they were more cautious. You were more cautious. If you'd been slightly healthier, you might have overeaten and died.
That's right.
So it might have actually.
I guess, it wasn't my time yet. My number wasn't up yet.
Yeah. Now, how did the Americans come in, on foot or?
They came on, the ones I've seen were in a Jeep. And then we've seen several Jeeps. And then we've seen, troops march in. And we've seen American tank in the middle of the road. And it was just, that whole scene is like, like really unbelievable that I lived to see that. Again, I lived to see being liberated.
Did you understand what you were seeing?
I understood that the Germans lost the war and finally it was over. And we just didn't know what is going to happen next. And,
right.
I just,
So where were you actually when you were liberated? Were you standing outside? Or were you...
I was sort of laying down.
Where?
When I heard, people saying that the Americans are here.
Where were you?
I was laying on a bunk or on, up against a wall there.
In the barrack?
In the barracks.
And did you go out, or were you too weak?
Yeah, I went out. I got up and I was walking, wobbling out, like everybody else got out. Everybody, the whole camp, everybody was walking towards the gate.
Right.
Leave camp, get out.
Right.
And from that point, I started to make my way back to Berkovits, to where I, was born.
And when you were liberated, were you wearing one of those striped uniforms?
Yes.
And how much do you think you weighed?
How much did I weigh? I have no idea, but I was very, very skinny.
Right. And what was the first thing you had to eat when you were liberated?
The first thing, I got a hold of a piece of bread.
Who gave that to you?
The Americans gave us all the bread, and they gave us, anything you wanted, you could have eaten, you could have gotten whatever, but they kept warning us not to overeat.
Did a doctor look at you?
I got a hold of a candy bar that somebody handed me.
Right.
And I didn't see a candy bar, not even before camp. We didn't have any candy because we were so poor.
Right.
But when I seen the candy bar, I took one bite out of it, and I couldn't eat it anymore. I just couldn't.
Well, you couldn't digest.
I guess I must have been sick.
Right. And what was the reaction of the soldiers when they saw you?
I couldn't communicate with them, but there were some people that spoke English, and some of the soldiers, spoke, some other languages or whatever, but I couldn't. Even Jewish soldiers, there were a lot of Jewish men in there, but they didn't speak Yiddish.
Right. I mean, were there piles of bodies around the camp, or?
There were piles of bodies, piles and piles of bodies.
Do you remember seeing piles of bodies in Mauthausen?
Yes, one time I've seen.
Yeah.
In Auschwitz, I've seen them every day.
Right. It was never your job to carry those bodies.
No, but they were, selected groups that used to go to those bodies and pile them up on one of these open, flat trucks and haul them away to the crematorium. It was a daily occurrence.
Right, so where was the pile of bodies in Mauthausen? Where was that?
There was at some point in the camp.
Was Mauthausen, was that on a hill?
Yes.
Right. So when you were walking, you weren't walking flat, you were always walking up?
No. Once you're on top, the top was flat. But to go up there, it was going up a hill.
Okay. And anything else you can remember when you were liberated? I mean, did they put you on a stretcher, or did a doctor look at you?
No. I was able to walk.
Okay. And where did you stay in the beginning? The first,
The first couple of days, I stayed in a school.
Did they try to kill any Germans in the beginning?
Even me.
You did?
Even me, as sick as I was and everything else, I was looking for revenge.
Right. So what did you do to try to get revenge?
I'm not talking about it.
Right. So,
the only place I killed was in Korea.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, did you see them hang any Germans, or at the end, or?
No, I didn't see.